This program is not for children. If you are under the age of 13, then politely leave. You spoilt little twats. Thank you.
From the deepest, darkest recesses of Dangerous Nerds headquarters, Keith Moncrief and Gerry Kissel.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Minefield. That's Keith over there.
And that's Gerry.
And we're here to talk about some nerd stuff. And of course, the nerd stuff we're going to talk about today is none other than writer-director David S. Goyer. We're going to call this our Pop Culture Minefield David S. Goyer retrospective. And part of this came about because, the announcement that he's working for Warner Brothers on doing a television series, a Batman television series. And I saw a lot of people sort of lose their shit yesterday. And I'm sitting there thinking, what on earth is the beef with David S. Goyer? And I'm thinking, did he pull a Ryan Johnson somewhere that I'm not aware of? I mean, my goodness. I looked at his resume, and I'm not even talking about as director, just as a writer. 85% of what he's written, I like and or love.
Yeah.
So, and somebody popped up about Unborn. Is like, I'm like, look, man, if you're going to base your dislike or the quality of a writer, director, based solely off of like a one shit film, then Ridley Scott's a fucking garbage director. And we know that that's not true. And I remember saying to you last night while we were talking about Goyer that Goyer's worst comic-related stuff is still 100 times better than anything Greg Berlanti ever put out.
Mm-hmm. Or even Jeff Johns.
Well, Jeff Johns is, in my opinion, really hasn't put out anything good. Outside of the comics, nothing. I don't like anything of Jeff Johns. I think he's a garbage showrunner, producer.
Well, I tell people to look at his resume since he's been involved in Hollywood and look at all the stuff that he's been a part of. Some of the stuff people didn't even know. But for the most part, he has been involved with every single Greg Berlanti production. And I think the only show that he was not involved with was Black Lightning. But everything he's put out, everything that Greg Berlanti has done, whether it be, Arrow all the way up to Stargirl, and even working on Green Lantern with Greg Berlanti, which was not a good movie. And yet David Goyer gets more guff. I can't explain it because Goyer helped. He was writing stuff for Chris Nolan for the Batman trilogy. And before that, he did the Blade trilogy, of which Blade, in my opinion, is the film that kicked off our cinematic love affair with comic books again, 1 year after Warner Brothers destroyed it with Batman and Robin. So, I mean, I really am not understanding this because Goyer just looks like, his resume looks like the resume of someone who is a professional and who is also a fan of comics. You get that looking at his resume. And for the other two, I mean, look at Greg Berlanti's resume. Look at Jeff Johns' resume. I mean, come on, the ratio of just good stuff to mediocre stuff to plain bad. Goyer's got it over both those guys. And
I know that he was one of the names attached to the writing of Tim Miller's Terminator Dark Fate, which is just garbage writing.
Well, there were so many people involved in the
that's it.
writing of that movie.
That was a Mulligan stew. He
Yeah.
was one of the early writers. He was
Yeah.
not involved with the second draft or the final draft that went into the shooting. I'm guarantee you that anything good that he added to the stew was taken out and replaced by whatever, what is his name? Justin Rhodes put in there. Much less, Billy Ray, and I know Tim Miller had some say on that script.
Yeah.
So I don't put any blame on Goyer on that. In fact, if I were him, I would have probably tried to get my name off of that. But
and that's the big difference between Goyer and the other two. For Jeff Johns, and the reason why I'm picking on him right now is because of that email that John Campea got, which mysteriously was sent out there to, I don't know, try to bring the truth to the situation behind the scenes of Justice League. And, in the future, when you're defending people, it would be good when you're describing the behind the scenes machinations to at least also include the name of the person who was technically in charge of the DC universe at that point, because Jeff Johns' name appears nowhere in that email. Nowhere. Pro, con, whatever. They just mysteriously left him out. And the reason why I have to call him out is because he did that effing DC special leading into coming out of Wonder Woman, leading into what eventually, was released with Justice League. And that was the special that they had. That was a one-time television special that was hosted by Kevin Smith. And Jeff Johns comes on there to add, I don't know what, being the head guy for DC Films at that time. And so if you're going to come out and be the man, you got to be the man when things don't work out. That's what Kevin Feige is.
Kevin Feige is always there, good or bad. Jeff Johns is...
he disappears.
He's a Kevin Feige wannabe.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have the spinal fortitude of it, to say the least. Yeah, I agree with you.
And to be fair, I've never met any of these gentlemen, okay? Jeff Johns could be one of the nicest people I have ever met. I'm just critiquing him based on what he does for a living. Well, this is what he wants. And if this is really what he wants, and this is the best, you should not be doing anything if you're not going to give it 100%.
Yeah, because once again, there's nothing by Jeff Johns that I like that's been put on film or television. But let's bring it back to Goyer.
Let's bring it back to Goyer.
Because Goyer, Goyer brought about Constantine,
and that was a television series.
That was without Berlanti, with his fucking ham fist stuck into the mix. And I really did enjoy it. Even though it was NBC, I enjoyed what they were doing. And of course, NBC couldn't, they understood that about as well as CBS understood, or NBC understood Star Trek when it first was released in '66. They're like, what are we doing with this? I don't know.
They were expecting their own version of the CW hit Supernatural, and what they got was one of the comics and characters that inspired the people that created Supernatural.
Yeah. But since Berlanti got a hold of that character, the actor is always great. But
yes,
the storytelling and use of the character, just awful. So I just have no faith. People go, hey, look what's coming to the CW. We got a new DC. And I'm like, is Berlanti involved? Then I'm not going to be watching because it's going to be garbage. Because Berlanti, unlike most comic book movie makers, makes his things exclusive rather than inclusive. He makes them exclusive for one specific group rather than for everybody. Everybody should feel welcome here to enjoy this. And instead, he's like, well, if you don't like this, don't watch it. And that's not what comic books is supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what comic book movies or TV shows are supposed to be about. So his shows are going to keep tanking because he makes his for an exclusive group rather than making it all inclusive for everybody, which is truly being what do they call that? Where they want to involve everybody. It's the D word that they keep using.
Look,
it's divisive is the D word I want to use.
You go to all the trouble of creating a television series, and you have someone like Jeff Johns who's there to help you, and all you do is you take what is available and you kind of subvert expectations. If you're having to do that, don't, because many of these characters have been around 20, 30, 40 years or more. You're not really adding anything to it. Although I'm not saying that you should be a slave to everything that's been done in the past. If you truly are a fan, everything you really need to understand about that character has already been presented. So taking pot shots at things, changing things up, all that does is just take you different. It takes you a different route. And if your material isn't that good, Legends of Tomorrow, then it really makes it difficult to sit through it, you know? And again, like you said, all these actors in all the Berlanti shows, all the actors are phenomenal. They get some great actors. They have
Ruby Rose couldn't act her way out of a paper bag.
But I still give her a pass because it being a Berlanti show and whatever abilities she had, it cancels each other out. But that show in no way has anything to do with the comic. And again, as I've said before on this show, I challenge anybody that calls themselves a fan of that character to go and pick up the top 10 best issues of that comic, read them, and then watch that show and see whether or not that show's been successful in adapting the character. It hasn't been. It is just badly written. It's got a good premise, badly written.
Yeah. So, once again, let's bring it back to what we're supposed to be talking about, Mr. Goyer, because Mr. Goyer, I'm not going to start with his early work, which goes all the way back to Death Warrant with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He did that really bad movie, Demonic Toys. He wrote that. Let me think. There was like, Tim Thomerson's movie, Dollman versus Demonic Toys.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't write it, but he was, I can't remember. I think he was just credited for the characters on that one. But he did write the screenplay for Puppet Masters, which
that was fantastic.
Really liked.
I beg you, if you've never heard of the book, let alone the movie, check that movie out. It is worth your time. Check it out. Puppet Masters.
Hercules. I love that film, and I'm not that big a fan of his Crow movie, but his next big film was 2 years later, which was huge in my opinion. Mm-hmm. was Dark City, and I freaking love Rufus Sewell is so good in that movie. Kiefer Sutherland, what a great movie. And then he did a crappy made-for-TV Nick Fury movie with
David Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff, which was just awful. It was bad. But, he loves comics, and he saw an opportunity to work on a comic thing, and to
do it faithfully. But see, this is the difference. He did it faithfully. He was trying to bring the comic to life. It may not have worked, but he did it faithfully.
Totally a comic movie.
Yes.
It was a true to the comics version of Nick Fury. But his next piece, which I really did enjoy, was Blade, and I love Blade. I love Blade 2.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, I love Blade Trinity.
Yes.
Blade Trinity got derailed, but it wasn't derailed by him as And that was really one of his big steps. He got to direct it. And of all the negative hype that came from that, who wasn't spoken of negatively in the making of that film? Who, Keith?
Could it be The Star?
No, I'm talking about who wasn't dissed.
Oh, yeah, who wasn't dissed? The director, David Goyer.
Nobody had anything negative to say. It was all good. David Goyer did his job. Wesley Snipes lost his mind. He wouldn't even talk to the director after a while. He started using Post-it notes, and he would only talk in character. I'm like, maybe he was doing drugs. I don't know what was up with him. But the rest of the cast were like doing the best they could. Ryan Reynolds stole the show. And I think he was given a chance to steal the show because Wesley Snipes was being such a... I don't want to use the word.
Well, he and Jessica Biel were supposed to be spun off into their own movies. And had Wesley actually...
That was Deadpool. He was playing Deadpool.
Yeah. And look, as far as I'm concerned, for that particular movie, you had all the pieces to make it work. And what you had was the lead actor not being very cooperative to the point where you're having to use a stunt double for scenes because Wesley Snipes was yeah. And it's the same kind of stuff that you hear about going on in other movies when somebody decides to just lose it.
Prima donna. I'm too important. But, he was also involved with the Blade series, which I never watched. I got to be honest with you. I was never interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
But right after he did Blade Trinity, he turns right around and writes the screenplay as well as a script for the video game for Batman Begins.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is a solid freaking movie. Great freaking writing. And then he does the TV series Threshold. That's a series I wish had taken off. I love that show.
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage was the bomb in that show.
Brent Spiner was also very good. And
what's her name? The Italian actress, American Italian. Gina, I forget her name. Gorgeous. She was in Watchmen. And
yeah.
It'll come to me in a second. But
it'll come to me.
It's Gina, isn't it? Gina? No, Carla Gugino.
Yeah. Yes.
Carla Gugino is in it.
She is phenomenal actress, and she's gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
And that's a show that I wish had taken off. He did the screenplay for Jumper with Anakin Skywalker, and then of course he did the screenplay for the animated anthology movie Batman Gotham Knights or Gotham Knight, and then of course he came up with the story for The Dark Knight. And did he write? No, I think Jonathan Nolan wrote.
Yeah, he and Jonathan Nolan worked on that. And I gotta say, look, at this point,
I don't think he was involved with the screenplay, though. I think that was all Jonathan Nolan.
Yeah. Well, they're both credited. But I think, Nolan took the majority of that because he was working directly for his brother.
Right.
But I gotta say, if anybody's career were to stop at that point, that is one heck of a career you've got.
Oh yeah, and we're only halfway there right now. And then he does this one stinker of a movie, and everybody throws it out there like, "Here's proof he's a shitty writer." Was the movie The Unborn, which, it was not very good. But it's like, look, and I said this before: if you're going to judge this guy as a director based off of one movie, then Ridley Scott is a garbage director. And we know that's not true. So fuck off with that analogy.
Then he does Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, which in and of itself was a movie that was actually meant to be made cheaper. And so they took it overseas. They did all this stuff with it. Look, to me, this is literally a situation where
his script got gutted. Just say it. His script got gutted. But I want to step back because I'm a big gamer for Call of Duty, and one of my favorite games is Call of Duty Black Ops, and he was the story consultant for that series. And in
Call
fact,
of Duty
he
Black Ops
wrote-
and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 were the two that he did.
Wrote the script to the new Black Ops game, which is, I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. When I watched that trailer, I'm like, oh my god, I want to play this game. But then, of course, bringing back to the Dark Knight, he of course came up with the story for The Dark Knight Rises. He wrote the screenplay for Man of Steel, but he was under the control of Christopher Nolan in writing that script. And
Warner Brothers both.
And they were the ones who dictated what went into it. And when you see stupid shit in there, do not blame David S. Goyer for that. That is stuff that he was made to write, just like don't blame Zack Snyder, because Zack Snyder was made to direct it exactly as was written, and the way it was written was exactly as was instructed by Christopher Nolan and Warner Brothers. Now, he also worked on Godzilla, which I loved the first movie in 2014. But here's the big one. Here's the screamer, is Constantine. He brought Constantine to television for the first fucking time. He gave us a true interpretation of Constantine. The closest thing, I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed watching Keanu. That was a fun movie, but it wasn't. That's like an alternate universe version of Constantine.
Yes.
This was Constantine. It had the characters, it had the personality, it had everything except for the bad language. And that's because
they would have had that. Yeah, it was on NBC. Had that been on cable, had that been an HBO, if that had been an HBO event series, that thing would have been huge. And just with what they put on the show, just what they had on the network version of the show, had it been on HBO, would have been huge. That show should have rivaled, or at least been in the same league as The Walking Dead, for the potential of what they had for that show. And NBC got cold feet, and then they cut the series order of episodes to 13, and pretty much just stopped it before things really were going to get good, because Goyer, being a guy who was dedicated to comics, I remember after the pilot, everybody had lost their minds because of something that happened just over the course of 2 seconds on that show during the pilot, which is where one character who's going through where Constantine lives picks up the helmet of Naboo. And it was just, and I lost my mind. It's like, it's the helmet of Naboo.
Yep.
And that was all gonna be a part of season 2. He was actually in the middle of bringing us the Spectre towards the end of the first season.
Yeah, it was such a mistake putting that on NBC. But then, of course, he did Da Vinci's Demons, which I think he got only one season out of that. That show
No. That show actually got multiple seasons.
Did it? Okay.
Yes.
I watched the first season, and I enjoyed it. It was good writing. Constantine, The Legend Continues. He wrote 2 Star Wars virtual things for Vader. And then he did this series with Jeff Johns, and was Berlanti involved with Krypton? I can't remember.
No, Berlanti wasn't. That was a total thing between David Goyer and 2 other producers, one of whom I think had been one of the original people that had worked on Gotham. And all of that combined together to make Krypton, which only lasted 2 seasons, still better than a majority of what Berlanti was able to do. And all of the stuff they did on Krypton, as far as all of the Krypton related stuff and their version of Brainiac, looks far superior than the $150 they spent on the makeup for Brainiac 5 on Supergirl. I challenge anybody to Google.
After season 1, I was done with that show. I mean, I only halfway liked that show. And then it left CBS and went to the CW, and it just turned to crap. Kevin Smith, I lost a lot of respect for Kevin Smith when he did that episode for Supergirl. Just, it was such garbage. And then I found out that he cried over Rise of Skywalker and all that shit, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you. I mean, God love him for surviving that heart attack. It was a widowmaker, but fuck you, Kevin Smith. But Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is like, I still haven't gotten to play it yet, and that's what he's worked on recently. He's also worked on The Sandman. He's working on Foundation, the TV series, which I'm very excited about.
If you are a science fiction fan,
yep,
you need to understand how big this is. This is on the same level as the new Dune movie, in so much as that you're taking two just incredible books and you're bringing life to those universes. And Foundation is another one of those stories that is just Foundation is so incredible.
Yep.
It inspired not just regular science fiction, but there is one chapter in there that actually inspired George Lucas and Star Wars. And I keep telling people, if you've never read Foundation before, you need to read it. It's one of the books that should be on your permanent list if you're going to understand what real science fiction is, so you can understand how bad current Star Trek is. So.
Oh, you won't get any argument from me. And of course, he worked on the new series that's being worked. It's in pre-production now. I think the Sandman.
Yeah.
And which I'm hoping is going to be good. Neil Gaiman's involved with it, as I recall.
And again, if you are a comic book fan, this should blow your mind that David Goyer is the one that is actually going to accomplish this. Everybody and their mother's been trying to bring the Sandman to either the theater screen or on TV. They've tried all different types of stuff. David Goyer even worked before on a different version of the Sandman, trying to work with actor. Oh man, see, I just fizzed on his name. From The Dark Knight Rises. He was trying to work with.
What role did that person play in it in Dark Knight Rises?
He was Robin. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and David Goyer were working on a version of Sandman together, and that didn't go so well. But now he's gotten his second chance, and it looks like that's happening. And notice, there's no Jeff Johns around. He's getting it done, kids, and he actually, through one of his movies, broke the acting barrier for genre films. The Dark Knight was the first comic book film to ever win one of the major Academy Awards that nobody ever thought any comic book movie would ever win. I mean, for acting, best supporting actor. So seriously, if you're still a hater, you got to question why. You really have to.
And as we wrap this up, because we're coming up on a half hour. I want to point out that two of the things he's attached to right now is He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and he's also attached to Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Yeah. Look, this guy has so many things that he's involved with, and when you look at what
but he did Unborn. He did Unborn.
Everybody gets a stinker. Who's still holding?
Somebody threw Blade Trinity in there like that was bad, and I'm like, I like that film, and I'm pretty critical, and I like that film. It had some clunky shit in it, but overall, it was still a solid story.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Final word on David S. Goyer.
David Goyer is incredibly talented, and has he had a few bumps here and there? who doesn't have bumps. But overall, it's like you keep saying, you cannot argue with the solid majority of all the stuff that he has done right.
85%. And once again, I want to reiterate that the worst comic work that David Goyer has done is 100 times better than the best that Greg Berlanti has ever done.
With Jeff Johns' assistance.
Amen, brother. And with that, guys, this is Pop Culture Minefield. That's Keith over there.
And that's most definitely Gary Cassell.
And we're out of here. Get off our lawns.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Pop Culture Minefield. If you've enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Remember, you can find us at Pop Culture Minefield on both Facebook and Instagram. Thank you again.